I never really had a conviction to church plant, to be honest. I was a pastor at Newlife at Robina and just was happy in my position doing pastoral care. Never wanted to be that guy up the front. Stu Cameron then got me to preach here and there, but wasn't really a calling of mine, I felt, to go and plant a church. Then one day Stu came to me and actually said that there was a church plant opportunity down in Coolangatta and you're the man for it. And I'm like, oh, that's lovely. It's lovely you think I'm the man for it. But I'll need to go away and actually pray and fast about that to see if that's what God really wants me to do. Because if I go down there under my own strength, it'd be an absolute disaster. And so it wasn't on my radar until that sort of came up, and then went away and prayed about it and felt God call me to go down. Yeah, it was interesting because Stu actually asked me this question when he was preparing me to go down. And he said to me, what is the vision for Cooley? And my heart for Cooley at the time was, and still is to today, was that it'd be a place where we can train up the next generation of pastors and leaders. You know, I was one of the pastors at Robina, and there are quite a few pastors there. You'd preach, 2-3 times a year, which wasn't a whole lot, which doesn't really prepare you to preach every week at your local church if you go and do a church plant. So I thought I have an opportunity here to actually set up a brand new culture, and a culture where it's where we go and raise up the next generation of leaders. So my heart was that I'd bring people along. One of them was David Skembry, which we recently planted into Newlife Coolangatta, and brought him on the journey. So he saw church planting from the very beginning and trained him up how to preach and lead, and brought him into absolutely everything I do to show him what it means to plant a church or to be a leader of a church. Draw him into all that to prepare him, and also I've just trained up a whole bunch of other pastors or people who have gone out into ministry or preachers as well. We've got about 7 or so preachers currently at Cooley that we have, and so I only preach every second week. So my heart is that there'd be space for people to actually exercise ministry. So every second week I'll preach, and then after that we'll have someone else that I'm training in those positions. So that was my heart, and we're seeing the realisation of that through David planting a church. Now I've got Pastor Ori down there, which I'm training to plant a church in the near future as well. So I love it. The first step was that prayer and fasting. I think you need to pray and fast and see if this is what God's calling you to. Because I just knew if I went down under my own power that I wouldn't have done very well. Yeah. And I remember just praying and fasting about it and actually complaining to God after it had been offered to me, saying, I'm not a leader like Stu, I'm not a leader like Mike and all these other great leaders that I knew that are pastors, yourself, Ralph. I'm not a great leader like Ralph, and this is going to be a disaster, God. You've got the wrong person. And I just remember the Holy Spirit convict my heart and say, that's lack of faith. And I was like, no, God, you don't understand. I have 100% faith in you. I'm talking about me. I don't have faith in me. And I just heard him say again, yep, that's lack of faith. You're saying I can't do something through you. And it was that moment of just prayer and fasting and going, okay, God, if you're calling me, you're going to do it, so I'll go. And so if you don't have that calling, that understanding of that calling, when things get hard, you will reconsider why am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And you'll just probably eject. You'll just pull the ejection button because it's like, this is way too hard. Church planting is not easy. It's not an easy journey. So it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe this was my idea. And if you have any of that doubt, it's just not going to work. And so for me, when I went through those hard times, when I faced obstacles, when things were getting tough, it was like, no, but God's called me here. And I believe that calling. And so I think that's super important to put in place, is actually recognize your calling, spend that time with God and see if it is what he's calling you into. I think the practical side of things, I think there's a lot of practical things you can do to get a church plant going well. I think like looking at location, obviously, looking at times, looking at the context that you're going to be going into, looking at the community that you're going to be planting into, looking at all those different aspects. Because if you go into a community and you're not right for their context, it's also going to be a disaster. It's like, what do they need? What do they need in this community? And so running into it's looking at the demographic of the area that you're wanting to go to and going, okay, how does church look in this space, in this time, in our generation, that would actually reach the most amount of people for Jesus in that area. And then there's just practical things like setting up core teams and stuff like that. So when we decided to plant down in Cooley, it was putting that out there to the church, to the Uniting Church, but also to New Life Church, and saying to people, hey, we're planting in Cooley. Is there anyone that wants to go? And I would sit with people and I'd have a chat with them. And I had specific questions that I would ask because I really wanted to find out the heart. So some people I sit with and I'd say, why are you coming? They go, well, you're my favourite pastor. I'm like, okay, cool, don't come. Because I'm going to say something from the stage, or I'm not going to call you back one day, and if you're only there because of me, then that's probably not going to work. You need to be there for Jesus. You need to be there for that community that we want to see, the gospel spread out through that area. So having specific questions to try and determine who should come on that church planting journey with me was really good, but also building a core team, because you can't do it on your own. Many people think that, I'm a great leader, I'll go out and I'll be able to do all this. Planting a church is a lot of work, and you need a lot of people around you to support you and love you, and to take up the tools with you. Like, it's just too difficult to do it yourself, and I see that happen with a lot of church planters. They just get overwhelmed, overworked, and they burn out just because they don't know the importance of doing it as community. Like Jesus said, we're meant to be a body of believers coming together, all different parts. So we got to believe that, but then we got to activate that. So I think for me, starting was actually getting that core team around me, looking at their different gifts and talents. Don't just chuck bodies in a spot because someone said I'll serve, but going, what's your talent, what's your gift, and actually putting them in the corresponding area within the church to help that get started. So yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of things you can do at the beginning before you actually even start. By garnishing interest, looking at the context, also getting a core team to go, how are we going to do this? So then when you actually have that all ready to go, you're like, okay, we're going to go in, we've got an actual plan, we've got people to pull this off. Yeah, I think there's two parts. There's the spiritual challenge, and then there's just the practical side of things. I think at first it was a spiritual challenge for me, so stepping into it, Satan just started attacking me from all sort of angles. A week before we opened the church plant, my car got stolen. So that was gone, and then the insurance company's like, we're not paying you out because you're out surfing and you should have secured the key, all that kind of stuff. So then I'm like, cool, I don't have a car now, I don't have the finances, I'll just have to buy a $500 car and try and get around, like those kind of things, and it pulls you away. It was pulling me away from the church plant, like arguing with the insurance company, all that kind of stuff. So I got to a point where I was just like, I'm done. I'm just like not going to argue anymore. I'm just going to trust you, God, and just keep pursuing the church plant and getting this thing off the ground. So there's different angles that Satan will try and get you to distract you away from what you're trying to do. So I think that we need to be aware of the spiritual side of it and be praying into that and have people praying into that for you, and then work out what do I need to fight and what do I not need to fight. And then there's just the practical side of things. Like, we planted Newlife Cooley in February 2020, 3 weeks before COVID. So we opened for 3 weeks and then we were shut down for like 6 months. And so I was like, okay, great time to plant a church. This is awesome. How are we going to keep this thing afloat when we've just kicked off? But again, God's faithful. And it was that time we're like, cool, like there's things that we could fix up in the property. We could do some maintenance. We could do some renovations. So then when we do open up, then things will be, ready to go. And that was even a challenge. Like, when we open up, because of the space at Cooley, we could only have like 15, 20 people in there because of the 2x2 issue that they had. And so then we had to put on 2 services straight away. And when you've only got a very small community kicking off, and you've kicked off with 2 services already, people are there from like 6 in the morning till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so that was a challenge. And so it's a challenge to keep that momentum going and casting that vision of what God could do, even though you're so restricted. So we had plenty of restrictions, even up to the fact that we're on the border. We're like 2 streets back from the New South Wales border. Even after everyone went back to normal here in Queensland, we still had half of our people stuck on the other side of the border for another 12 months. So it's hard to build a church when only half your people are coming. But again, God was faithful, and we just kept slowly growing over that period. Whew. It's not for the faint-hearted. Like, it's not easy. It's actually quite difficult and hard, but also it's one of the most joyful things that I've ever done. Like, to see God come through in so many different situations, to see God birth something from just an idea to where we are today at Newlife Cooley, it just blows me away. That God would be there throughout that whole process and that He would do it. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's awesome. And I think that if we want to see the UC, the Uniting Church, like grow and be around for the next couple of 100 years, we need to go, okay, what do we need to do? We need to step into these spaces. Yes, they're hard, but how can we love and support each other in these spaces that we would see the kingdom grow again? Like, we're on decline. All the churches around Australia are on decline, but we want to be something different. Like, we don't want to see the church die on our watch. And I have a passion to go, this is not going to die on my watch. And so if I need to step into something that is hard, well, I'm going to do that. And if I've got to train other people to step into that place that's hard, well, that's what I want to do, because I want to see the kingdom. You know, we could have seen that church die at Cooley. They could have shut down, sold the property, be gone forever in that community, and now it's a thriving community. And so that just excites me. We have so much opportunity in the Uniting Church to actually bring renewal. Oh, mate, there's so many. Like, just people come to mind. For me, it's not about, you know, the success of the church. It's all the people that come to mind that have come to faith at Cooley. Like, last year, it was our 5th year there in the church plant, and we had the most baptisms we've ever had. So we had over 30 baptisms. And so I just look at those faces and I go, this is what we're here for. We're here to see people come into relationship with Jesus, have their life fully transformed, and then actually see them grow as disciples within the church. Some of them go into leadership, some of them go into preaching. I've had ones that have been saved in Alpha right at the beginning that we're now preaching at our church. And I'm like, I can just see God, his hand at work through all these different people's lives. And then we see what that does in the community. They're pulling other people in to come to know Jesus. And I couldn't put my finger on one thing, because God is too faithful and across so many things. But what comes to mind is those people, the people that come to know him for the first time. Yeah, it's changed me a lot, like a lot. I never thought I was a leader. My entire life, I never thought I was a leader. And so even when I was a pastor at Rabina, I was like, I'm not those guys like Stu and Mike, those others, those leaders. I just liked being in the background. I'm an introvert. Get me to move chairs, let me just do pastoral care, let me just love the community. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not a strategic thinker, all that kind of stuff. And that was my wrestle with Stu going, hey, we think you should plant the church. I'm like, oh, yeah, nah, I don't think so. And even in the first couple of years at Cooley, I still didn't believe I was a leader. It was so strange. And I think that held me back from really stepping into what God had for me. And not in a way that, you know, I want to build this kingdom. It's just like believing you are who you are and what God's created you to be. And all leaders are different. I don't have to be Stu. I don't have to be Mike. I don't have to be Ralph. I can just be Scott in the way that I lead and the way that I do ministry, and God will actually honour that. If we put him at the forefront and we're chasing his kingdom, he does the rest. And so I think the last couple of years has been recognised, yes, I'm a leader. God's called me to lead. And that's now expanded out within the family of churches when I lead the church planting residency program and a few other things. I'm like, okay, those I would say no to every time before. And I'm like, okay, I can step into that. Not that I know everything, but I have something maybe I can give. And if I've got something to give, then I'll give that. And if they want it, great. If they don't, great. That's fine. I don't have to be anything great. So I think just that realization that, yeah, God's called me to lead his people, and called me to lead in other spheres that I never thought I'd actually be in. Yeah, I think obviously that's the Christian answer, right, is staying close to Jesus. I think we can get so caught up, especially in a church plant, of just doing. Like, we've got to get this done, we've got to get this program going, we've got to get Alpha running, we've got to get, you know, our small groups up and running, all that kind of stuff. There's so much stuff to do. And you can just get caught up in that. Like, you can just get up in the morning and go, great, this is what I've got to do. I've got to get into all that stuff and get it sorted. But I think you just got to stay close to Jesus. You've got to stay close to his word. Often we go and read, and I'm not against reading books. I love reading different books, but sometimes we spend more time in other books than we do in the Bible. And then we wonder why we're getting coloured by the world, and our leadership is being coloured by the world, and we start acting like CEOs rather than under shepherds of Jesus. That when we actually read more of the word, it realigns us. We can take that stuff and go, cool, this is good, helps me understand how to lead and do it effectively, but it needs to come under the light of the gospel and how Jesus led. And so I think mainly a lot of my reading is just the Bible, and that overcomes most of the things. And I want to glean other things, but that's my source of where I get truth and where I get my leadership from. So yeah, I think over the years, obviously prayer, all the common things, you know, getting away with Jesus, spending time, like having your day off, I think it's a really important one. In a church plant, you can work 7 days a week, like literally 12, 14-hour days. That's not uncommon. But I think you need to have that day off. So when I write sermons, I write them all week. Friday, I don't even look at it. And then I come back Saturday morning and I look at it, I'm like, what was I even thinking? Like, that doesn't even make sense. But in the moment, throughout the busyness of the week, it makes sense. But having that break, I can come back and see it with fresh eyes and be like, oh no, hang on, I need to make that clearer, and then I can make it clearer. When I don't have that break, you're just rolling through the next thing. So I think it's really important to have your Sabbath, and teach your team to have it as well. One, you've got to have the call. You've got to be called by God. You've got to be called to that area. You've got to go away and seek his face and ask, Lord, is this what you want me to do? You may be a church planter, but it may not be in that area. Or you may be called to do something else. I don't know. But I think that's core into going off and planning a church. I think recognise it's going to be hard work. You know, you've got to sit down with, if you have a family, you've got to sit down with them and go, hey, here's the reality of what we're stepping into. I did that with my family, with my wife and my kids. I said, look, you know, ministry's pretty full on at Newlife, at Robina, but it's probably going to be a little bit more full on. And it's probably going to mean that we're all going to be engaged in this thing at a little bit deeper level. They're going to look to you just because you're my wife. And so are we willing to go on this journey together? Really walk through that before you go on that journey, and then keep walking through that. There's a question I asked my wife and my boys many years ago, and I said to her, where does all the things in my life rank? Like, where do you rank? Where does God rank? All that kind of stuff. And just let it be. Just let them answer. Don't guide them. And she said, oh, God, and then us, you know, me and the boys. I'm like, when you say God, what do you mean? Like, does that mean church? She goes, no, just God, us, then like your family, church, and it went down like that. And I'm like, cool, that's a good list to have. But if that ever changes, if my boy's like, no, church is up here, it's like God, then church, and then us, I'm like, I need to reassess. So you need to continually look at how are things working, because it affects the people around you, and that'll affect your ministry. I think you need to understand there's a spiritual side of things. There's a spiritual battle that goes on when you plant a church. So you've got to be aware of that. I think you've got to be aware of, you need strategy. You need to assess where you're going. You need to have core teams. You need to have these things in place to help you be able to plant this church and have it sustainable. You've got to be able to put leaders in place when you've planted the churches over different ministries that you can lead. So I think there's a whole bunch of things like in the supernatural and in the natural that you need to be aware of. And that's why doing some, you know, church planting courses and things like that just help you think differently. Like even for me, I did one prior to church planting and I gleaned a little bit from different things. I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. I've not thought of that. I need to probably implement that to help later down the track. So I think getting information from a lot of different areas is really wise. To develop a culture anywhere, it's got to come from the leadership. Like if the leadership don't believe in it, then it's not going to be the culture. So when I develop the culture at Cooley, that's got to start with me. If I say, you know, we're a welcoming, loving church and I don't welcome people and talk to anyone, they go, it's great that you said that, but I don't see that in you. And so what happens is then no one else does it because that's not what we do here. And that's set from the leadership. So for me, like a key thing for me when I was setting up Cooley was, okay, I'm going to love my staff. They're going to be like family to me. They're going to know that I love them. So then when people see me interacting with my staff, they go, oh no, he genuinely loves them and they love each other. That then flows down through the church. So if you're looking at church planting, how do I set up a culture of church planting? That has to start with the leadership. The leadership's got to go, this is what we're about. We're about church planting, revitalization. We're about seeing the church grow and be renewed. We're not going to take decline anymore. This is what we're going to be going after as a church. And it starts there and then it filters down. And then the rest of us need to get on board. Some of us need to let go of things. Sometimes we hold on to stuff just because we like it the way it is, or this is what I've always known, and not looking out and going, but hang on, what is out there? Like what could actually happen if we brought revitalization or renewal or planted churches, like having that heart to see the gospel spread far and wide. I think we all need to carry a bit of that culture, because if we do, then we'll help one another in that space. So culture is a hard thing to start, but it starts with someone. And I think it needs to start with leadership and then that'll trickle down. Yeah, I'd say faithfulness. I think God is faithful. If he calls you into ministry, he is faithful. And everything I've done, everything he's called me into, he's been so faithful. And I believe if we stand firm on the gospel, if we don't deviate from the truth, if we walk in holiness and righteousness, then God is faithful all the time. It's not about us building our kingdoms or getting better and all that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, I believe in the gospel. I'm going to stand on that, God. Wherever the gospel is uplifted and Jesus is uplifted, that's where the Holy Spirit is. And where the Holy Spirit is, he brings change. Every single time. Like, God is faithful every single time to bring change in people's hearts and minds. And so I think as I've gone forward in ministry, I'm like, oh, God is so faithful. Often I'll get in my car and drive home after a church service. I'm like, why? Why are you so faithful? Like, why are you so good in that space? I know why, but it still blows me away every time, because I'm like, you're just good. You just want this thing to work. And often we get in the way because we want to take control and we want to be the leaders. And it's just like, hey, if we stand firm on the gospel and the truth, then he'll do it.